Hello there, and welcome to the 14th episode of Creating Heads in Fusion 360. In this episode, we are operating at 300% speed, and it's just a reference for you to go off. I'm working unscripted to save some time, but I'll try to inform you about my design decisions to the best of my ability. Okay, let's begin. So firstly, we're working on the side of the eye socket and the side of the cheeks as well. We're trying to give a general curvature to the model, almost turning it into a sphere. Obviously not spherical, but notice how I'm sort of unkinking the corner in the forehead, just trying to give it a general curvature, and that makes it a lot easier to model when it's a head. So then we're doing the sort of filustrum sort of area, and the cheeks, but just giving it a general curvature. And the reason why we don't want to go too sort of harsh into the features yet is once it's sort of turned into a head, that's when the sort of modelling, a lot more of it takes place. Quite a lot happens early on, and if you can get things precisely right early on, then I won't discourage you from doing that. But I find that once it's a sort of a head model instead of a face model, you start to understand things a bit more. Things start to make a lot more sense. It's just, I don't know how to better explain it than that. So adjusting the size of the cheeks, and let's have a look. Yeah, it's looking okay. We've still got the gaps around the eye sockets, obviously. So now we're just going to adjust and add an extra section ahead. And pull that back, and if you notice at the top, or at least I think I noticed it later on, but because the model is split down the center, so there's so sometimes you might do you might have the split line not be on a surface. It's difficult to say. So the mirror line runs down the center of the face, correct? Yes. And sometimes you'll have an adjustable line on that, and sometimes you won't. So when you don't, it won't matter. When you like drag the head back like this, it won't matter when you add a new section. But when you do have a surface edge that matches that mirror line, what happens is you won't notice it, but it's actually two surfaces sort of in identical. Well, you'll get it now. Hopefully, if I find it. But if you noticed how when I clicked on the face, it didn't loop the whole way around. That's because of. Hopefully, I spot it. So hang about. Yeah, still adjusting it for the forehead. But basically, it's a sort of feature. You think it's joined at the top, but it's actually not. And because it's so perfectly aligned, you don't actually notice it. It's only when you, like even if you click on the weld tool, because the points overlap, you wouldn't notice it then. It's only if you drag it side to side as opposed to front to back. So we're adding a bit of extra skull here. And notice how I didn't go all the way to the bottom, and that's because we sort of make the cranium, the brain case, whatever section of the skull. I sort of work like that. Here we go. So notice how it's split. It looks perfectly overlapped. So we might have that feature on the bottom as well, but in this case I don't think we do. But yeah, so rather than continually dragging it out, I sort of separate the top of the head from the neck, and I find that's definitely been a rule that's worked. So in the first model that I did, first head model that I ever did, I didn't like separate that brain section and that neck section early on, and I found that it really distorted the head shape further back, and I covered it up with like a hair surface, but I knew the horror of what was underneath. So since then I've tried out a few different ways, and this seems to be the best. So I sort of split around the sort of like cheekbone height, I guess, and that just seems to work. So you can work on the the top section separately. Notice how I'm just dragging it back again. And I'm not going up to that hairline, so the head I know would go slightly higher in the centre, but at the moment that's not the priority. The priority is just giving a sort of uniform curvature. But you start to see that this model is going from a face to a head. I've also used a checkerboard pattern, I don't know if you noticed there, to drag the surface up, and that's just a time-saving method to move a surface. So rather than clicking on every square, clicking on a sort of checkerboard, it will raise all the squares within that checkerboard uniformly, because all the edges of like the squares that you haven't specifically selected are still selected by the pattern. So I find that very helpful. So that's looking a lot better. There's still some sharp curves. I know I'm going to be able to cover a lot of these problems up with the hair, but it looks a lot more like a head than a face. But anyway, that's sort of it for this episode. I'm sorry it's such a short one, and I know it's been a long time, but I'm hoping to get a few more done, and I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching. Bye.